Prologue: The Ghost in the Refectory. It begins, as it must, with a ghost, not a spectre of a man, but of an idea. Here, on the end wall of a refectory in Milan's Santa Maria delle Grazie, is Leonardo da Vinci's most haunting legacy, the Last Supper, or what is left of it. Even in its own time, it was seen as a miracle of art, a revolution in how a story could be told in paint. But today, to stand before it is to witness a masterpiece in a state of perpetual decay. The colors are muted, the plaster is flaked. A mortal wound, inflicted at the moment of its creation, bleeds across the centuries. It is a sublime ruin, a perfect tragic metaphor for the man who conceived it. For Leonardo's genius was not one of durable granite monuments. It was a thing of lightning flashes, of furious inquiry and ephemeral brilliance. He chose to paint this, his most ambitious narrative work, not in the permanent, robust medium of fresco, but with an experimental mix of tempera and oil on dry plaster. It was a disastrous choice, a technical failure that doomed the work to begin crumbling almost as soon as he declared it finished. Why? Why would a man of such unparalleled observational power, a man who understood the very fabric of the material world, make such a fundamental error? The question misreads the man. Leonardo was not interested in permanence. He was interested in possibility. He was chasing a quality of light and shadow, a psychological depth that the rapid, unforgiving technique of true fresco could not grant him. He sacrificed eternity for a fleeting moment of truth. And in that sacrifice we find the central divine paradox of his life. A man who could see and design the future, but who remained eternally bound to the frustrating present. A mind that could grasp the entirety of the cosmos, yet struggled to complete a single commission on time. To understand the man who would create such a flawed, transcendent masterpiece, we must journey back to its source. To a crowded workshop in the crucible of the Renaissance, where the spark of this unquenchable and ultimately untamable curiosity was first fanned into a flame. Chapter 1. The Spark of Florence. 15th century Florence was not a city for dreamers. It was a city of commerce, of bankers and wool merchants, of fierce competition and brutal ambition. Its currency was the florin, but its lifeblood was talent. And the forcing house for that talent was the bottega, the workshop. Here, under the watchful eye of a master, boys were hammered into artists. Into this world, around 1466, stepped the young Leonardo, the illegitimate son of a provincial notary. He was apprenticed to Andrea del Verrocchio, a master of immense skill and versatility. Verrocchio's studio was a humming factory of creativity. Altarpieces, bronze statues, portraits, decorative chests. Verrocchio was a maker, a supreme craftsman who could turn his hand to anything the wealthy patrons of Florence desired. He taught his boys how to grind pigments, prepare panels with gesso, cast bronze, and master the unforgiving precision of line. But one of his apprentices was different. The boy from Vinci was not just learning to make, he was learning to see. Where others saw a subject to be rendered, Leonardo saw a problem to be solved. How does light fall on draped cloth? How do the muscles in a neck tense with emotion? What is the precise geometry of a smile? His contemporaries noted his almost unnerving beauty, his physical strength, his charm. But behind those handsome features was a mind of feral intensity. He began filling notebooks, a habit that would become his life's true obsession. He sketched the faces of passers-by, the mechanics of a bird's wing, the swirling eddies of the Arno River. These were not mere preparatory studies for paintings. They were acts of interrogation. He was cross-examining the world, peeling it back layer by layer, convinced that everything, from the veins in a leaf to the currents of the air, was governed by the same divine mathematics. The famous story told by the art historian Giorgio Vasari is that Verrocchio, upon seeing the angel Leonardo had painted in his masterwork, The Baptism of Christ, threw down his own brush, vowing never to paint again, having been so utterly surpassed by his pupil. The tale is likely apocryphal, but it contains a deeper truth. It wasn't that Leonardo's angel was simply better. It was that it was fundamentally different. Verrocchio's figures are masterfully sculpted, defined by a clear, confident line. Leonardo's angel seems to emerge from the atmosphere itself. Its form is softened by a smoky haze, his developing technique of sfumato, and its face holds a subtle interior psychology that felt radically new. It was a creature of flesh and spirit, not of paint and panel. Leonardo had learned all he could from Verrocchio. The workshop, once a universe of possibility, now felt like a cage. Florence, for all its intellectual ferment, was too small for his ambitions. His early works from this period, like the haunting, unfinished Adoration of the Magi, show a mind already wrestling with compositions of immense complexity, teeming with figures and a swirling, visionary energy. The work is a blizzard of ideas, a testament to a mind so full of inspiration that committing to a single, final form was becoming an agony. He needed a patron who understood not just art, but grand, world-altering ideas. And so, in 1482, he looked north to the glittering martial court of Milan. Chapter 2. The Master of Milan. Leonardo's introduction to Ludovico Sforza, the de facto ruler of Milan, was not a humble plea for artistic patronage. It was one of history's most audacious job applications. In a letter outlining his capabilities, he dedicated 10 paragraphs to his prowess as a military engineer. He could design unbreakable bridges, devastating cannons, armored vehicles, and methods for demolishing any fortress. He was a master of siegecraft and hydraulic engineering. Only at the very end, in a brief, almost dismissive 11th paragraph, did he add that he could also execute sculpture in marble, bronze, and clay, and, in painting, can do whatever may be done, as well as any other, whoever he may be. He was offering himself not as a painter, but as a polymath, an architect of reality. It was a brilliant pitch to a ruler who was more concerned with power and spectacle than with the quiet contemplation of art. Ludovico, known as Il Moro, the Moor for his dark complexion, hired him. For the next 17 years, Leonardo would serve the Sforza court in what would be the most productive and, paradoxically, the most frustrating period of his life. This is where the divine paradox of Leonardo takes center stage. His mind, unleashed from the commercial constraints of the Florentine workshops, exploded in 1,000 different directions. He designed elaborate sets for court festivals, creating mechanical wonders that dazzled the Milanese elite. He studied urban planning, designing ideal cities with multi-level transport systems. He investigated acoustics, anatomy, botany, geology, and optics. His notebooks from this period are a staggering repository of human genius, filled with designs for flying machines, submarines, and ever more intricate war machines. But for his patron, this boundless curiosity came at a price. Ludovico wanted tangible results, monuments to his own glory. And Leonardo, the great promise-maker, was proving to be a frustratingly poor deliverer. The grandest project of all was to be a monument to Ludovico's father, Francesco Sforza. Leonardo proposed a bronze horse, the Gran Cavallo, that would be the largest equestrian statue the world had ever seen. For years he labored on it, perfecting the pose, solving the immense technical challenges of the cast. He completed the colossal clay model, a wonder of the age. But the final act, the casting in bronze, never came. Politics intervened. The bronze was diverted to be made into cannon to fight the invading French. In 1499, Milan fell. The French soldiers, as Vasari tells it, used the magnificent clay horse for target practice, reducing Leonardo's Herculean effort to a pile of mud and rubble. It was the quintessential Leonardian story, a vision of unparalleled grandeur, years of obsessive research, a breathtaking preliminary form, and ultimately, nothing. A ghost. His mind was always leaping ahead to the next puzzle. The tedious, mechanical work of finishing a project seemed to hold little interest for him. He was a man in love with the chase, not the kill. When the French took Milan, Leonardo, now nearly 50, fled, a wanderer once more, his greatest project left in ruins behind him. Chapter 3. The Legend and the Ghost. When Leonardo returned to Florence at the turn of the new century, he was a living legend. But the city had changed. A new titan was dominating the artistic landscape, a brutish, tempestuous, and divinely talented young sculptor named Michelangelo Buonarroti. The city fathers, in a stroke of public relations genius, pitted the two giants against each other, commissioning them to paint vast battle murals on opposite walls of the new council chamber. It was a clash of titans and a clash of philosophies. Michelangelo, the sculptor, saw art as an act of liberation, of freeing the perfect form he believed was already trapped inside the marble. His art was about force, divine power, and the heroic struggle. Leonardo, the scientist, saw art as an act of inquiry. His figures were built from the inside out, based on a profound understanding of anatomy and the subtle mechanics of emotion. His chosen subject was the Battle of Anghiari, a swirling, chaotic vortex of men and horses locked in mortal combat. His preparatory cartoon was hailed as a masterpiece. Yet once again, the project ended in failure. Experimenting with a painting technique, he found his pigments wouldn't dry correctly and began to run down the wall. Disgusted, he abandoned the project. On the opposite wall, Michelangelo never even began his fresco. The two greatest artistic projects of the High Renaissance, by the two greatest artists, were never completed. By now, the pattern was tragically clear. Yet it was in this period that Leonardo began work on a small portrait of a Florentine silk merchant's wife, a modest commission he would never deliver, a painting he would never consider finished, a work he would carry with him on his travels for the rest of his life. We know it as the Mona Lisa. It is the ultimate expression of his art. It is less a portrait of a specific person than it is a deep, scientific, and philosophical investigation into the nature of humanity itself. That famous, elusive smile is a masterclass in optics and psychology, painted with such microscopic delicacy that it is never fully graspable. He had captured life's ambiguity, its constant state of flux, on a poplar panel. By refusing to finish it, by keeping it for himself, it became his eternal laboratory. During these same years, his other obsession intensified, moving from the observable world into the forbidden. He began a series of clandestine anatomical dissections, peeling back the skin of human corpses to chart the hidden machinery within. In the cold, candle-lit silence of the mortuary, he produced hundreds of drawings of unparalleled beauty and scientific accuracy. He was charting the course of every muscle, every artery, every organ, seeking the physical seat of the soul. This was knowledge for its own sake, a terrifying heretical pursuit that placed him far beyond the realm of art. And as he filled notebook after notebook, the legend was haunted by his own mortality. It is in one of these notebooks that we find the despairing, human cry of the ghost within the genius. Tell me, tell me if anything ever was done. Epilogue. The coda at Clos Lucé. The final act of his life was not one of struggle, but of sanctuary. In 1516, he accepted the invitation of the young and admiring King Francis I of France. He was given the title First Painter, Architect, and Engineer to the king, and the use of the manor house of Clos Lucé. There were no grand commissions, no pressure to produce. The king was content simply to have the great Leonardo near him, to listen to him talk. His right hand was now paralyzed, and his great artistic projects were behind him. Here, in the calm autumn of his life, surrounded by his loyal students, he dedicated himself to his final and perhaps greatest work, ordering his notebooks. He sat, an old man with a long white beard, sifting through thousands of pages of parchment, pages filled with mirrored script and drawings of impossible machines, swirling water, growing embryos, the anatomy of a woodpecker's tongue, the structure of the human heart. It is here, in this final act of curation, that we find the answer to his life's paradox. Was he a failure? The man who left behind a handful of finished paintings, a ruined mural, a clay model destroyed by soldiers, and 100 abandoned projects. To see him as such is to miss the point entirely. The paintings and sculptures were never the true work. They were merely the brilliant byproducts of his real, lifelong project, a relentless, empirical investigation into every aspect of the known universe. His true masterpiece, his finished cathedral, was this, the chaotic, sprawling, encyclopedic collection of notebooks. They are the testament to a mind that refused to be categorized, that saw no distinction between art and science, between the beauty of a painted face and the mechanics of a pumping heart. His failures were the necessary casualties of an intellect too vast to be contained by a single discipline or a single lifetime. He did not fail to finish his work. His work was, in fact, the one thing he never stopped doing: learning, observing, questioning, being the eternal apprentice. He died here at Clos Lucé in 1519. He did not die a painter, or an engineer, or an architect. He died as Leonardo da Vinci, a category of one. He left behind a legacy not of finished objects, but of a new way of being human, one driven by insatiable curiosity and the profound belief that everything is connected. His life's work wasn't unfinished. It was infinite, and it still echoes in every question we dare to ask.